You start over all the time in life, but it doesn't mean you let go of the foundational principles that you start under.
So on today's episode, we have a really special guest, Randy. I'm glad to have you here.
Good to be here.
Randy Hensley is the Executive Director of Coalition for Kids in Johnson City. He's also the lead pastor at the Rock Fellowship Church. Is that correct?
It is Johnson City across from Walmart. We always say that because everybody knows where Walmart is.
Okay, that's the best way to find it.
That's right.
You've been serving as, part of the founding group with Coalition for Kids 22 years ago.
I would say 1999, 22 years.
And the Rock Fellowship has been 21 years?
Founded it too, started it in 2000. You know, you sometimes you look up and at 20 years, you look at somebody else and they're literally retiring moving away out of 20 and 30 years. And I look at it, and at the Coalition especially, I look up and go, it just feels like we're starting.
You literally are just getting started.
That's what it feels
because
like.
you're just hitting your stride.
That's what it feels like.
And you guys are still growing, and it's still expanding. And you're from talking to you, there's a whole lot of possibilities.
Yeah,
for
the opportunities are big. My secretary's husband, who passed on New Year's Day, and she's 80. He had an amazing life, but he always said, when you're hitting home runs, that's not the time to take a break.
Exactly.
Keep swinging till you strike out.
That's why I wanted to talk to you, Randy, because just the little bit of time that we've had to know each other, I've heard a lot of philosophy from you that I feel like matches our platform for trying to improve people's life, to helping them find the big win each and every day if possible. And one of the things I love about what you do with Coalition for Kids is that you guys are getting kids early and you're teaching them winning strategies for life. What you're doing is so rich, and I'm very jealous of that. Like, I wish I could do that, man, like every day and get to have that type of involvement with kids.
I was 15 years prior to the Coalition. I opened 6 companies in the automotive industry. So that gave me what I thought was a great experience for 15 years in managing companies and dealing with people. And then I turned, and when the Coalition opportunity came, ministry came a few years before that, and then the Coalition, which was full-time ministry, now 2 jobs in a sense. I would say that if I stopped doing what I'm doing now, I know nobody who has experienced more purpose and more fulfillment from their work than I have every day. There's never been one day in the last 22 years that I didn't want to go to work.
See, man, that's a rich life.
It's crazy. Oh, yeah, it's crazy.
I know a lot of our audience, has that same mindset that it's cool to meet somebody, like I said, that gets to do that every day, but it leads me to want to ask you questions on how you handle some of these things, like in life. What's your platform based on for these kids? I mean, tell us a little bit about that in terms of what you do for them on a daily basis.
The appropriate answer, or the first answer, I would say, is the idea of a lot of what you just said. The platform came from my growing up. I grew up in the country in Mountain City on a farm. I went to Granny and Papa's every day after school, get off the bus, eat a snack, do your homework, eat supper, and then go play. And that was the basis behind the Coalition for Kids and what we do. And that simply means that they have a safe place, they have family, they trust those that they're around, you hold them accountable to do their work, and then you have some fun, all in all that. The second answer is I learned that I didn't have to push as much about the kids. I just needed to keep the underlying foundation. But if I poured into my staff and pushed them into becoming what they needed to become to see lives change, then I didn't have to worry about the kids. The deal is you got to raise them up with some character, because young people need poured into more than they realize. And so you have to coach them into doing things, saying things, speaking in ways that honor other people and not just themselves.
Well, I think it's sad from a standpoint of our society that there's so many kids that aren't getting that at home. And they end up at your doorstep, and you've been tasked with, hey, man, we got to figure out a way to take care of these kids.
I don't know. I would say it's always been easy, but it's always been hard, because you got to figure out how to do it better all the time. And you got to be good enough to where when kids leave that they will tell somebody else to come, because that's really where all the growth comes from. If we were a place that wasn't working, the kids wouldn't want to come back.
Right. Have you ever done the math on that in terms of however many kids that you average in a year over 20 years?
Almost 10,000 kids have came through the doors.
You can't hide light.
That's right. That's
good.
good.
When
That's
something
good.
is really good, you can't hide it, man.
Yeah.
Kids will find out.
Yes.
So, Randy, let me ask you this. Kids come there after school. You help them with homework. You feed them supper. You let them do some things and have fun. That's the
General picture.
When you started, was that an intentional strategy?
Oh, yeah. It's interesting that our strategy hasn't changed. And it all comes down to, again, being raised in Mountain City on a farm. When the school bus came home, you got a snack. You did your homework, you eat supper, and you got to go out and play. Yeah. And that's literally what I based everything we do on.
It's a simple model,
It's
man.
crazy. I'm telling you, it's crazy. All they need is somebody with them. It's not how special their curriculum is.
It's amazing. It's amazing how far a hug and a ham sandwich will go.
That's exactly right.
So what I love about hearing this story of the strategy staying kind of the same from day one, that's just, I think, speaks very highly to the original idea, the original strategy, that if you guys were ordained to do that, that's obviously been a success. Well, let's talk about all the lessons from that, because what we try to do here in this platform is help other people listen to examples of, great life stories of how people have built, successful and winning brands or companies or organizations. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a business that's been this successul.
I would say there are a few of my board members that have done that, and I think it's what's helped us. People should know this, but I'll repeat it. It's who you surround yourself with that keeps your focus, because you're not going to be sharp enough to always know the right answer. So there were times that I was veering. I wanted to go after the parents and I had a board member who pulled me back and said, "We're good at this. We can't fix the world." That's why we're still doing the same thing we started doing.
That's usually a consistent theme through most successful organizations.
I'd say so. And everybody's got to adapt. I mean, we know that. Companies have to adapt. People have to adapt. When you get married, you have to adapt. I would say it's called starting over. You start over all the time in life, but it doesn't mean you let go of the foundational principles that you start under. But in our case, we did not change. We just continued to get better at the details.
Where did you see the most growth? Like, at what point was there where you can look back and say, man, that really worked well, and that really, helped us expand and see some significant growth at that point?
Maybe I would have possibly two answers. One of them may not be that great.
One of the others.
Well,
one of the other one will work.
One of them is, if you track our growth, we were pretty not perfect, but we were pretty consistent with adding a school and then stabilizing funding. So one year we'd add a school. The second year I would stabilize the funding. And I didn't do that on purpose. The cool part was we had strategic planning, multiple years creating our path, and not once did we follow it. So I always thought it's kind of bogus. But what we're learning now is even in teaching strategic planning is, you got to make it fluid. And you got to keep going back and adjusting. So everything we planned on paper came true, just not the same way. So that would be one picture. Now, the other place where I got to see effectiveness raise up, and that would be when I felt like I had the right, people may know these phrases too, when I had the right people on the bus, but not in the right seats.
Right.
And so 2 different times, I moved four leadership staff 2 different times from their positions to totally new roles. And I thought they were in a good role, but I wasn't even close. Once we realized the giftedness in the areas where they were trying to work, but could work, and we shifted them, everything changed. Those 2 times when I got those staff moved and just turned them in the bus to where they could come to work every day and be working in that thing that they were just good at.
Yeah.
But it took them, another life lesson, it took them serving in a place they might not have been perfect at, but doing it for the right reason until the window came for them to be moved into the place they loved.
But how key was it the fact that you at least had the right people on the bus?
Oh, yeah. Somebody who doesn't have the ability to read people, it's not just a personality test to put you in the right seat. Right. But I'll use the personality test if I don't have the gift. I just thank God for the gift to be able to read people.
Yeah. You got to go with your gut on that a lot of times, don't you?
Yeah, and I've also had to let it go. So I used to do all the hiring, and so now somebody else does all the hiring.
Really?
But luckily,
I would like to delegate that.
they're really good. They've done really well. I can usually pick out the ones that they're going to end up having to do something with. Doesn't have to see them very long.
Yeah, but you can never be too sure. I have found that over the years that you can hire somebody and say, okay, we're going to do a 90-day trial period or whatever, or probation, and then 120 days in, you figure out this is not the right
Totally
fit.
agree.
You know, or 6 months, or even over a year. So,
yes, and I think, again, for people who are trying to grow their business, who are trying to grow their world that they're operating in business-wise especially, is when you recognize that you need to cut the strings, that you go ahead and cut the strings. I look at leaders and say, you've got to believe that what you're doing is releasing them to go find that which they need to be doing.
Yeah.
So you'll have a space to feel, and it'll benefit you and it'll benefit them.
So before I forget to ask you this, what ways could somebody help you or your organization or be involved?
So I would make you a short list, and that would be, if you're a hands-on person, you want to help kids, we are the largest organization with volunteers in Johnson City anyway. I don't know beyond that. So we work with probably over 800 volunteers. But folks can volunteer. They can also volunteer not hands-on, because there are people that don't manage kids well. That's okay. You can paint the fence or do the gardening or mow the yard, whatever, that type of stuff. So we have those kind of hands-on things. There's always a check writing capacity. We do accept checks, just so you know. Go to the website.
Check writing capacity.
Right.
Okay, I like
we allow
that.
check. Now, I don't know how many people know what a check is these days, but there are people who do fundraisers for us. And so that's another thing. You know, a sorority does a golf tournament, or, big and little. I got a company that does toboggans and scarves and gloves every year for Christmas. This year, we had a company do 100 bicycles.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is. We got that stuff just happens. I'm telling you, I've seen God move through people by giving to us for 22 years. That's absolutely mind-blowing.
Well, another thing I wanted to kind of ask you about that I heard you talk about, and this has stuck in my mind a lot since I heard you say it, and that was that you guys help the kids follow rules and order, but you make sure they have fun. How do you balance those two?
Yeah, that's
a good lesson for life in a lot of
it is.
settings,
I think I mentioned to you one time I was doing a presentation to a United Way group, and there was a teacher in the group, and I shared how it's school after school. When a kid comes here, they're required to attend. They can't come when they want. They can't leave when they want. And there is not 1 minute of the day that's not ordered. So you're in a classroom, you're at snack time, you're at supper time, you're at STEM lab, but you're never free to do or pick or go wherever you want to go. Now, you can pick options, but you're still going to be in a class type setting. And so the teacher said, well, it doesn't sound like to me that the kids could have much fun if they're always standing in line. And I was like, well, why don't we just go see? And so we went to the classroom. Well, it's not as stiff as it sounds, because the staff know how to take care of the kids. Order's a big deal in their lives. They have to have it.
I was going to say, from some of the environments that they come from,
Yes.
the home environments, they probably crave that.
I will never forget the third year of the coalition, my board president, he saw a hole in the wall where the gym door opened back into the drywall, and they had opened the door and punched the door handle into the wall, put a hole in it. And he said, fix the wall right away. And I was kind of caught off guard. And he said, the home lives these kids can come from, we will not be anything but showing them how much you need to respect and take care of the things you have. And that was a lesson for me. I was like, yeah, you're right. We want our stuff kept. We want it nice. We want them to see how to keep things nice, and that it affects their lives when they work like that.
That's so cool, Randy, man. Like, it's a good example. Like I said, it's so relevant to
It is.
a lot of businesses, people, home life.
And it's also what I think my generation back grew up with, but it's not as common today as it was.
Right.
I'm not beating up on everybody today, but it's just not as common today as it was.
How do you keep yourself motivated, sharp, effective? Like, who's coaching you? Who's speaking into you? What's your winning strategy for every day?
I've just always been right about everything.
So that's cool, man.
Okay, so
it's good when you just start out knowing it all.
That's right. Let's rewind. Yeah, that's not really the right answer, right? No, the right answer.
No, I think that was the answer. I think we got it, man. Like,
I would think what I'm saying, I would think you're pretty daggum disciplined to be able to have the success and the number of things that you've done for 20 years consistently successful. There's got to be some discipline there, number one, but some desire to grow and desire to continue to succeed.
Yeah, the real answer, bottom line answer is, and I tell this to anybody who wonders about how to make it in life, is I say, keep it simple in regards to, I try to honor God today and today alone. And everybody thinks you're this visionary that's had this thing grow, and how did you see it coming? And I never seen it coming, not once. I went in the first day, didn't know what a 501c3 was or an at-risk kid. And I said, we're going to help the kids we have today, and we're going to do it well. Mm-hmm. We're going to try to figure out. And over time, we added, and I learned how to fundraise, and I learned how to ask, and I learned how to not be afraid. And you took your licks when you messed up, and you read a book or you talked to somebody who'd done it for 20 years, and you just kept, being teachable, always being teachable, and always understanding.
I love that tough-minded mentality that you have as far as, hey, I made mistakes, took my licks, kept on going.
Oh, yeah. And that's
that comes from getting whipped a lot.
My counselor says that is, and I think the whole idea of counseling is, I think that everybody could use counseling every day of everybody's life. I don't think anybody has the right to be outside of that. And so my counseling just comes from a whole lot of different folk and people that I respect. But now God did make me with a good level of energy. So, working hard and going many hours is really easy for me, and I'm not the guy balanced.
Man, that's amazing.
Well, it's all, it was always
I wish I had that.
But I'm also married to the right person who has never once looked up and said, why are you not here? Of course, a lot of people don't want me here, but neither here nor there. I'm married to the one who doesn't need or want all this time that some other people may need.
I get that.
And that's okay with me.
You're very fortunate in that.
Yeah, because it's a 7-day-a-week job. I mean, I've never not worked 7 days, to the point that my board 10 years ago allowed me to only work Monday through Thursday and said, because we don't want you to burn out. And I was like, how do you burn out at something you love to do? It's weird to me. You burn out of things that are hard. And this is not hard. You're helping people. You're loving people. You're coaching people. I mean, it's
a lot of
nothing
people
but a
would
blessing.
take time off to do that.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
I would.
Yeah, you're right. I just get
Chris,
the opportunity to do it.
You could have a month off.
What would you want to do? Okay, I'd do that, what you
That's
just
right.
said. Go pour love into kids,
Yeah.
right? God gave you a vision. He's given you the strength and stamina and wisdom to be able to continue in that and be successful. So,
and again,
it's an amazing thing.
Picking the right people or getting to the right people in the right place just makes your job so much easier. I remember the day when I did it all, but I have a board that was smart enough to say, if we don't get people in the right place, like a grant writer for him, then he'll spend all his time doing what he's not good at,
right?
And that's writing a grant. Well, they were smart enough to know that, and now I coach that in other nonprofits. Because if you're not careful in the nonprofit world, you will live to be a manager and never be a leader. And you'll just manage day to day because you don't have the people on staff to help you do the things you're not good at.
Right.
And that's a challenge.
That's important how you recognize that there are people that need to be doing certain things. They have certain gifts that they started out life with, and that's what they need to do in order to be fulfilled.
Totally.
Like put a square peg in a square hole.
That's right.
But when you got a bunch of people in an environment, in a job location, and everybody's well placed, it does make for more harmony and just people working from more.
It does. And growing as we have, people have had an opportunity to get promoted. Because again, when you go to nonprofits, a nonprofit that don't grow, which is common, very common, when you're in a place where you can offer people promotion, you keep an energy within the organization that's really nice. When you plateau, it can get tough.
Randy, I ask this almost everybody that I talk to in this platform, but have you seen this in your experience that you're either growing or you're dying?
Well, it's not whether I've seen it. It's a principle of life.
Fact of life, right?
That's
it
right.
just is.
It is. There is no sitting still. Any sitting still, any non-movement is going backwards.
There's times in my life when I feel like, okay, I know I have to keep growing. I have to keep growing our company and our people and our culture and everything that we do. I want to build excellence into every category. There's times when I'm just, like, okay, I'm tired. I'd like to take a little bit of time, step back and all that. But I don't think I've ever allowed my own self to accept that mentality because I just have always been afraid of the results. Because I've seen people that go backwards or that don't strive really hard to grow and improve and succeed, and it becomes a lifestyle. So it's hard to go backwards.
Well, just make sure, because a lot of folks, if they're not self-aware, now I would say that self-aware is one of the highest levels of maturity that a person can reach, when they can see themselves and they can read themselves. So if you're self-aware and you're able to say, I've reached my peak, I've got to the top, I have to stop or I'm going to crash. Mm-hmm. Well, that's when a company gets in danger, when the leader says, I'm not being healthy about growing, because growth mostly the biggest growth you get is when you've been pruned. So when you learn how to step away in a healthy way and rest yourself or re-energize yourself, then the creative ideas come out. Then that's when you find out that you were doing something that you should have been doing different, and you all of a sudden go, why haven't we always done it this way? Well, that can only happen when you're not drained and when you're not strained. But pressure, brings it brings
fatigue.
It
can bring fatigue.
Yep. Pressure that takes you to fatigue. It's a rare thing for me to say fatigue was ever in the world for me. I still say I just
wonderment of nature.
What I do, But realize that even the pastoring, people have often said, if you had to pick between preaching and the coalition, what would you pick? And they're always surprised when I say I would never not preach, because seeing that role. Add that role of seeing lives changed every week. Well, there's nothing draining there. I mean, it's just like I'm ready. Then the danger comes is you're successful, and they start patting you on the back. The first thing the devil says is you can't do it, and the second thing he says is you're really good at this. So you got to watch yourself.
That's really good.
Yeah.
So that's cool that you're self-aware enough to see both sides of that. So
yeah. And the older you get, the more you realize you weren't as good as you thought you were, and there are a whole lot of people around you. You made some good decisions that got the people around you, the board, the staff, the idea.
Sometimes that's the best thing you can do is just surround yourself with good people.
It is number one above all things, because nobody makes it on their own. And if you need a bunch of people around you that just say yes to you, then, man, you're only going to go so far. You're going to go as far as you can take you.
Right,
and that's
exactly.
it. That's not what I want. But now it is tough when you are the man, the leader, the head, whatever the gender is, when you get to a place where you have to release some stuff for growth to happen, that can be challenging, because you were the one that made the right decisions up to then. But to let that go, sometimes that can be tough. But now that I have done that, I find myself really relaxed, just so trusting, because they've made the right decisions.
So the wisdom that comes from that, though, man, it's good advice for anybody in a leadership position. When you can step back and somebody else can take things further or can keep things going in a better direction than you can, step back, let them do it. There's a lot of peace in that.
There is a lot of peace, especially as in my case, the top guy, because you relieves you of stress. It's why I have the energy, because I'm not trying to carry the wagon. This has got a whole team of horses.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing in my prayers, that's one of the things I seek the most is if I have to be responsible for this company, I want to make sure that it has the strongest structure, foundation possible.
Sure.
With the right people in the right places on the bus, and that I have a clarity in terms of what we're doing, who we are, where we're going, how we're going to get there.
I don't think people understand enough the importance of the word you use, clarity, because I think clarity brings safety, clarity brings stability, Clarity allows me to feel like we're going in the right direction, even if sometimes we have to veer. So, clarity and mission is big.
Yeah, it's brought me more peace than almost any other word I can think of.
I
really.
totally see that. And this year, clarity's in the past 12 months, I should say the pandemic, I would say the word clarity is the one thing that folks have grown fearful of because they haven't had clarity in jobs and in companies and in the church and in the government. And I've just learned that the more clarity you can bring to your situation with staff, with family, with any situation, it will cause people to feel safer. And when people feel safe, they open up, they become vulnerable, and they're able to be used.
Well, sometimes when you get clarity, it takes, let's say, guts to make the hard decisions that become clear that maybe you kind of try to avoid. But clarity brings about opportunities that require bravery. You have to step up and do some things that are going to be painful, but it's going to be best for everybody. And then, I don't know, it's like releases so many constraints to success.
I was just thinking when you were saying that, you talk about clarity can be a challenge, and you got to have guts to do it. I think a lot of times it's because if I get really clear, I can be held accountable for success or failure.
Right.
And sometimes we're happier when it's kind of gray and we think we're going in the right direction because you can't hold me accountable. Now all of a sudden you can't qualify what I've done. You can't evaluate my results because I never said for sure how we were going to do this.
Yeah, and it's just an excuse on my part. Sometimes it's just laziness because I never took the time to sit down and really think through something all the way down to clarity. I don't like admitting that. It's not good, but it's something I know I've done now that I've learned how much easier life is with clarity. Yeah. And how much easier a business can run with everybody knowing the clarity. Mm-hmm. It's worth fighting for. It's worth pursuing.
But you're right. There's a strain and a stress literally to your body to have to work something all the way down to that because we tend to want to move quick. Yeah. We tend to get an idea and want to go now instead of walking through all the processes it takes to get to the word clarity.
Sometimes it's work to drill down to that, but then sometimes it's amazing if you put the work in and clarity still isn't coming, and then that night it just hits you, or the next day, or when you're sitting on a beach or on a vacation day or something, and it just, we weren't putting in the work then, but the work you'd put in mentally to try to get clarity on a situation, it finally gets revealed.
And then you have the moments that I think as you're describing here, putting in the work to get down to that point allows you to see things that you would have never seen.
But Randy, it's been so cool talking to you because
I appreciate that.
I call this the big win, but really there's been a lot of wins here that I've listened to you, and I think the audience will get a lot of winning strategies from listening to some of that. And what's your, if you had to sum up something that message from a big win perspective, what is that?
I would say there is no such thing as the big win. It is all about the little wins that add up, and therefore the only way you'll do that is to persevere because life is not easy. Even when you love what you're doing, it's going to be hard. You're going to get tired. Surround yourself with good people. Don't quit. If you've got a direction and a purpose in your heart, try to find out how you can get in the middle of it. And I promise the work you do will be multiplied compared to what you're doing right now.
Purposeful life is so much more rich.
It is.
And to make it know,
people don't realize how big that is. They just think it's kind of a phrase. And it's not a phrase. It's a real deal.
I almost called this on purpose. We got to change the name. He said it's not the big win. So it's a lot of little wins. So that was my second choice, was on purpose.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if if everybody does need to find their purpose.
Makes sense. Every business owner, every employee, and plus you got to find it's almost like a subcategory. You got to find your purpose even when you're not in a place where you can find your big purpose. That's why I say you got to serve in your work as if it's the biggest deal that ever is today. Therefore, that means if I work for you, I work for you the best of my ability. If I'm the janitorial, if I'm the executive financial director, whatever those roles are, they're all vitally important. We coach at the coalition all the time that when they built the first spaceship to go to the moon at NASA, when one group was touring, they came through and the janitor opened the door for the group and they said, "What do you do here?" He said, "I helped build a spaceship to go to the moon." And, that's the mindset that says you've got to believe in what you're doing and have a purpose and do it big.
That's rich. Well, man, it's been awesome hearing your insights. I know everybody's going to enjoy it. So thanks for coming down today. All right.
Thanks for having me. Love you, Don.
I loved it. Thanks.
Thank you for watching The Big Win. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe. It's your favorite place to listen to podcasts. And maybe share it with someone who could use a big win today. To keep up with what we're doing day to day, visit us at CumberlandMarketing.com or follow us on all social platforms at Cumberland Marketing.